Mic testing. Mic testing. Let's offer this time to God. O Lord, you are our wonderful God, and we rejoice in you. Thank you for this time. Thank you for taking care of us last night. Bless this day for us so that we may live for you. Help our loved ones. Help those who are affected, especially our schoolmates who are affected by the earthquake. And those who are cold right now, we pray for your work in their lives and how teach us how to help them. We also pray, oh God, that you would continue to provide for us, protect us, and help us to live for you, O Lord. Thank you so much. You are wonderful, God, to us. All these we pray in Christ's name. Amen. So today, our discussion is about writing general to specific texts, which is very important, especially for graduate students. Writing general to specific texts. General to specific texts are texts that move from broad statements to narrower ones. However, they often widen out again in the final sentence. Okay, general to specific texts are very common to graduate students writing. It's comparatively simple and it's often used as introductions to longer pieces of writing. General to specific texts can be used in answering essay exams, they can be used in writing assignments, and they can be used as background or scene setting, paragraph to an analysis or discussion. So, general to specific text can serve as a background, as an assignment, as an essay exam. And general to specific texts usually begin with a short or extended definition, a contrastive or comparative definition, a generalization or purposive statement, or a statement of fact. So let me allow you to copy that. A short or extended definition, a contrastive or comparative definition, a generalization or purposive statement, a statement of fact. So let me repeat. General to specific texts are texts that move from broad statements to narrower ones. However, they often widen out again in the final sentence. Then they are common to graduate student writing. They're comparatively simple and used as introductions to longer pieces of writing. They can be used in writing essay exams, in writing assignments, and writing backgrounds. We usually begin with a short or extended definition, a contrastive or comparative definition, a generalization or purposive statement, or a statement of fact. And we can have examples of these. So you have this is the structure of the general to specific text. You have a general statement, and then you provide a detail in support of the general statement. Or you may also provide more detailed support for the general statement. And then eventually you come out with a broader statement. So it's wide and then narrows, and it might broaden later on. So general statements are general statements of fact. General statements could be general statements of fact or statements about a topic. Sorry about that. So what are general statements? These are general statements of fact or statements about a topic that are usually but not necessarily always true. And general statements should be followed by detailed support. Okay, so these are general statements. So here's an example. The science of artificial intelligence is vastly improving. That's a general statement. Computer programmers are now able to create automatons that respond to humans in a variety of ways. New algorithms are being developed to deal with specific problems once thought to be solvable only by humans. So you have a general statement and then supported by two details, and then eventually it broadens out again. Over the years, new techniques for producing artificial intelligence are being developed. Okay, so it's broad and then narrows, and then it broadens out again in the end. So that's the idea of general specific text. Here's another example. In recent years, linguists have called attention to the possible disappearance of the world's languages. Estimates range from 50 to 90% of all languages will no longer be spoken in the next 30 years. This bodes ill for language diversity and for the science of linguistics. So you start out with a broad statement and then you support it with a narrower statement, and then it broadens out again. Okay, that's a good another good example of a general specific text. Talks about the disappearance of the world's languages, and it provides detailed support from 50 to 90% of all languages will no longer be spoken in the next 30 years. And then it broadens out again. This bodes ill for language diversity and for the science of linguistics. Here's the third one. The phrase language death sounds as stark and final as any other in which that word makes its unwelcome appearance, and it has similar implications and resonances. To say that a language is dead is like saying that a person is dead. It could be no other way, for languages have no existence without people. So notice the discussion about language death is broad, and then it provides details, and then later on it also broadens out. So broad, narrow, narrow, broad. Okay. This one is it's an extended example. Many countries of the world have achieved or are in the process of achieving many of the Millennium Development Goals and education for all targets set for the world in 2000 and due to be achieved by 2015. This is the good glass full half full picture, but many of these achievements have been the result of increases in nationally aggregated average, for example, in school enrollment, child survival, etc., which have masked what are often sharply increased disparities within nations, glass half empty, by gender, ability, location, such as urban, rural, remote, socioeconomic status, such as upper versus lower quintile, and ethnic or linguistic status, such as majority or dominant versus minority or non dominant. Thus, the world is becoming both less inclusive, with the marginalized and disempowered becoming more so, and less sustainable, as many demographic, social, economic, and environmental trends appear to be going in the wrong direction. It is therefore essential to address the reasons for these trends and examine what can be done to fill the glass. So, this statement starts out with something very broad, talking about the achievement of many countries, and then it narrows down by providing some contrastive ideas. And then in the end, it also, sorry about that, in the end, it also broadens out again. So all these are examples of general to specific texts. They start out as broad, then they provide details, so they narrow down, and then in the end they also broaden out again. Okay? This one I really like this example. One feature of human as well as other animals' behavior is that much of it is synchronized. Military folk march together, people sing in choirs and love to dance with others, all the time keeping in sync with each other, and in ways that facilitate social cohesion. I have always been fascinated by such processes and especially how it is enacted in and prescribed for talk. In this opening chapter, I indulge the reader in how communication accommodation theory was born, how it developed, and what follows in this volume. So, Howard Giles, the author of Communication Accommodation Theory, talks about the idea that many human behavior is synchronized, and he provides examples of how humans act synchronized: military folk, choir, dance, and he talks about how he's fascinated by such processes, and then he broadens out again by preparing the reader to listen, to read, continue to read in the next chapters. Okay, so broad example, example, broad. So broad, narrow, narrow, broad. Here's another clear example. Although Chinese has the greatest number of speakers, English is the most widely distributed language in the world today. This position derives from English being widely taught as a second language in schools and widely used in international communication. English is also the second language of many people in the world. So, the first sentence is a contrastive sentence, contrasting English from Chinese. It has a broad scope, and then it provides a narrow explanation, and then later on it broadens out again. So it's a general to specific text. Okay, let's talk about definitions as general to specific statements. Definitions are glosses that give information about the term and are placed parenthetically in a sentence signaled by such words as e.g. or ei, for example, or that is, or by phrases such as known as, called, or defined as. Definitions could also be considered sentence definitions that are short and sound like definitions found in a dictionary. Definitions, as general to specific statements, can also be in the form of extended definitions, which are longer and more detailed than dictionary definitions. So, definitions could be glosses that provide information about a term. They could be sentence definitions, or they could be extended definitions. So, definitions could serve as the start of general to specific statements. So here's an example of definition as general to specific text. English is a language that belongs to the West Germanic subgroup of the Indo-European language family. It began its history as a distinct tongue in England around 500 AD. So, the general to specific text is introduced using a definition. So a definition can be used as the first or second sentence in a general to specific text. And here are some words that signal definitions. You can use the term name. For example, the new species was named Arcodia deronicensis. The new species was named Arcodia deronicensis. Or you could use the word denote. Usually, the word denote is used in notation, like functions are denoted using f. Or you could use the word call, which is used only for introducing new information. For example, the new method is called activity-based costing, or ABC. So these are words that signal definitions: name, denote, and call. Here are other words that signal definitions. Known as could also be a word that signals definition. For example, another source of heat is the natural increase in temperature as the depth increases. This is known as the geothermal gradient. You can also use the term define. The word define is actually the safest to use of all these signal definitions. For example, Giles, Borges, and Taylor define ethno-linguistic vitality as that which makes a group likely to behave as a distinctive and active collective entity in intergroup situations. Okay, so you use the word define to signal a definition. In this example, the word define is used to signal the definition for the term ethno-linguistic vitality. Now, the word refer is used in academic writing but only for a technical definition. Refer is used in academic writing, but only for a technical definition. Okay, class, this is important. Here are parts of a definition. There are two parts of a definition. First is the genus, the general class to which the item belongs. You're defining an item and you start out with talking about its genus or general class. Now, there are many other members of that general class. That's why you need to differentiate it from other items belonging to the genus and use the word differentiate for that. So the differentiate differentiates the item being defined from other members of the genus. Again, you have a term and it belongs to a general class, what you call the genus, but then there are other members of that genus, which is why you need to differentiate the item being defined from other members of the genus. That differentiation is called the differentiate. For example, define guitar. A guitar is a musical instrument with six strings that are strummed or plucked to produce music. So, the red underlined words refer to the genus or the general class to which the item belongs. And the italicized words are the differentiate. They are the differentiate. They differentiate the item from other members of the general class. Okay, so you have a genus and you have a genus and you have uh, a differentiate. The genus talks about the general class to which the word belongs, and the differentiate talks about how that item is different from other members of the same general class, which we call the genus. Okay, let's go back to guitar. So, guitar is a musical instrument. That's the general class to which it belongs. But then there are other musical instruments. So how do you differentiate the guitar from those other instruments? Six strings that are strung or plucked to produce music. So you have the genus and you have the differentiate because the genus includes other musical instruments. So you need to provide an explanation or a differentiation of the guitar from other members of the same general class, from other kinds of musical instruments. So this one is a little more conceptual. Define diglossia. Diglossia is a social linguistic situation in which two languages or two varieties of the same language are used under different conditions within a community, often by the same speakers. The term is usually applied to languages with distinct high and low varieties, such as Classic Arabic and Modern Arabic. So diglossia here is being defined by using the genus. The genus is a social linguistic situation. Now, there are many other social linguistic situations other than diglossia. And so you need to differentiate diglossia from other kinds of social linguistic situations. So you use the differentiate for this. Again, the two parts of a definition, the genus and the differentiate. The genus refers to the general class to which the word belongs or the term belongs, and the differentiate differentiates the word being defined from other members of the same genus. Now, here are some possible general class words. Method. It's a method, process, technique, characteristic, device, system, material, concept or idea, approach, theory, proposition, branch of science, condition, tool, instrument, belief, or situation. Okay, notice that these are general class words. They're very broad words. So we have words on the left, which are items that are being defined, and the possible genus for the words for these. So dictionary, what is a dictionary? Well, it's a book. That's the genus. Ellipse, what is an ellipse? It's a shape. That's the genus. Cancer, what is the genus for cancer? Disease. Biology, what is the general class or genus of biology? Well, branch of science. Wind vane, what is the general class for wind vane? Well, general weather instrument. Diamond belongs to a general class of minerals. School is an example of an institution. Coke is an example of a beverage or soft drink. So for the terms that you're defining, you need to mention the genus, the general class to which they belong. So for your exercise, we will do this later on. Okay, we will do this later, not today. So dissertation, receipt, noun, calculator, Venn diagram, anthology, gaslighting, downplayer, free writing, signature. Okay. Class, by the way, I was supposed to deliver this face to face. Pero kinulang tayo ng oras. So, I was even supposed to give you a game in giving the general class. But we'll do this late. We will no longer do this. Instead, we'll continue talking about the grammar of definitions. So use the when talking about processes. Okay? For example, pollution is the unwanted change in the environment. So when you're talking about the process, that's just the unwanted change in the environment, you use the. Phishing refers to the misrepresentation of a legitimate website using a fake version. So misrepresentation of a legitimate website, that's a process. And you use the. You use the when talking about processes. Now, on the other hand, you use a or an when mentioning the general class. A star is a celestial body that shines by itself by producing energy from atomic processes. So here, the word star is being defined, and you use a general class or genus to define it, and you use the word a or an. In the second example, a sole proprietorship is a business owned by a single individual. So, what is sole proprietorship? It's a kind of business. Business is the general class or genus to which the sole proprietorship belongs, and you use a to refer to the business or to the genus, the general class. So, here are other grammars of definitions. Remove relative clauses that are composed of the relative pronoun and the verb to be. A wharf is a structure that is along a waterfront providing a place for ships to load or unload passengers or cargo. Now that is along is quite an extended wording. It's too wordy. So you just say A wharf is a structure along a waterfront providing a place for ships to load or unload passengers or cargo. So instead of saying that is along, you just say along. So you remove the relative clause to make the definition crispier. Many of us like crispy stuff. We don't like soggy stuff. Okay, here's another example. Remove relative clauses that are composed of the relative pronoun and the passive verb. For example, a theater is a building that has been specifically designed for dramatic performances. So you can make it a lot crispier by saying a theater is a building specifically designed for dramatic performances. So you remove the that has been, which is like deadwood. Okay, the second definition is a lot crispier, so much better to read, not very dragging. The first one is dragging, the second one is crispier. Let's talk about relative clauses that contain has or have with the word with. So you can remove the has or have. For example, a parliament is a government body which has the highest level of legislative authority in a country. So you can make it crispier by saying a parliament is a government body with the highest level of legislative authority in a country. So by removing the has, you make it crispier. So you remove which has with the word with. You replace the which has with the word with. Okay, instead of which has, you have the word with. So you can also replace relative clauses containing active verbs with the ing form of the verb. For example, a moon is a natural satellite that orbits a planet. You can make it crispier by saying a moon is a natural satellite orbiting a planet. Okay, that orbits is a bit dragging. You make it crispier by adding the word orbiting, by replacing that orbits with the word orbiting. You can also replace relative clauses containing can be with an adjective ending in able or able. So, for example, heat is a form of energy that can be transmitted through solid and liquid media. So you can replace that with heat is a form of energy transmittable through solid and liquid media. Heat is a form of energy transmittable through solid and liquid media. Okay? So maybe I'll give you an exercise for this. Okay, it will be great. It will be counted but not recorded. Okay, we will count your score, but we will not record your score. Okay. Okay. So by the way, class, we have three uh, online classes here. So notice relative clauses are dragging. So you replace them with a crispier word. Also, a good way of your definition is add a clause that will indicate the scope of the definition when writing to a more general audience. In dentistry, enamel is a hard white inorganic material on the crown of a tooth. You see, class, the word enamel could mean so many different things to different fields. But here, you limit the definition to dentistry. In dentistry, enamel is a hard white inorganic material on the crown of a tooth. In geology, a fault is a fracture in the Earth's crust in which the rock on one side of the fracture moves in relation to the rock on the other side. You see, class, the word fault could have many meanings. In badminton or ping pong, a fault could mean an error of a player, but we specify that we are making a definition in relation to a particular field. Here we are saying that the word fault is being defined in terms of the field of geology. So in geology, a fault is a fracture in the Earth's crust in which the rock on one side of the fracture moves in relation to the rock on the other side. So all these clauses which are put at the start of the definition enable us to clarify the scope of our definition. Okay, actually, class, if we do this face to face, this would move quite slowly because we would have a lot of exercises. But here, because this is online, we are moving quite fast. Now, common in academic writing is the use of a preposition followed by a relative clause. For example, a foundation is a base on which a structure can be built. On is the preposition, which is the relative clause. A foundation is a base on which a structure can be built. In grammar, the beneficiary is the constituent for which an action is done. For is the preposition, which is the relative clause. The for signals the benefit. In computer science, a bus is a device through which data is passed. So, the idea is you pass data. So you use the word through. You pass it through. So through which data is passed. Notice on which, for which, through which. Okay? So here's an exercise on prepositions plus relative clause. Number one, a thermometer is an instrument blank which temperature can be measured. Could you type the proper preposition on the blank in your in the what you call this, the chat box? What preposition should be put there in the blank? Okay, the correct answer is with. The correct answer is with. A thermometer is an instrument with which temperature can be measured. Not in which. With which. Kasi ginagamit mo eh. You're using it. So you use the word with. Okay, a thermometer is an instrument with which temperature can be measured. Okay, number two. Photosynthesis is a process blank which sunlight is used to manufacture carbohydrates from water and carbon dioxide. Number two na tayo. Photosynthesis is a process blank which sunlight is used to manufacture carbohydrates from water and carbon dioxide. So the correct answer could be during or in. Photosynthesis is a process in which sunlight is used to manufacture carbohydrates from water and carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis is a process during which sunlight is used to manufacture carbohydrates from water and carbon dioxide. So you can use during or in. Number three, a credit bureau is an organization blank which businesses can apply for financial information on potential customers. A credit bureau is an organization blank which businesses can apply for financial information on potential customers. So the answer is two. A credit bureau is an organization to which businesses can apply for financial information on potential customers. Because it's the target, it's the destination of your application. So a credit information is an organization to which businesses can apply for financial information on potential customers. So two is the correct answer for number three. Number four, an anhydride is a compound blank which the elements of water have been removed. Class, the clue there is remove. An anhydride is a compound blank which the elements of water have been removed. The clue there is the word removed. Any answers? You remove what? You remove from. So, an anhydride is a compound from which the elements of water have been removed. An anhydride is a compound from which the elements of water have been removed. Number five, an eclipse is a celestial event blank which one body, such as a star, is covered by another, such as a planet. Okay, you can use in, but the much better word is during. So an eclipse is a eventual event during which one body, such as a star, is covered by another, such as a planet. So a celestial event during which, because it's an event, you have the word during. You can also use the word in, uh, but the best one is the word during. Number six, an axis is an imaginary line blank which a body is said to rotate. I'm not sure if you can get this. Medyo mahirap to. This is quite idiomatic. This is very idiomatic class. So I don't expect many of you to get the correct answer unless you are quite idiomatic in English. So the correct answer is about. An axis is an imaginary line about which a body is said to rotate. You rotate about something. Okay. Very good, Jam and Maricel. Okay. Uh, it's 9:49. Let's take a break and see you at 10 o'clock. So see you at 10 o'clock. Sorry about that again, class. Hello again, class. Hello again, class. Uh, could you give a signal, maybe like an emoji that you are here? Yeah, or you can write something like that. Yeah. Thank you. So far, we are writing about general to specific text. The structure of a general to specific text is something broad, and it narrows and narrows and then broadens again. We also talked about how to write general to specific text, including definitions, and we talked about the grammar of general to specific texts. So here's an example. We're going to have an example. Write a general to specific text about climate change. So we can write a general to specific text about climate change using definition. So through definition, this is what this is what our general to specific text can look like. Climate change is a phenomenon in which the situation of the atmosphere and the ground is becoming worse. Sea levels are rising, typhoons are getting stronger, summers are getting hotter, winters become colder, and more devastating weather patterns are occurring. Climate change is considered by many to be a desperate condition that requires global effort to deal with. So, you define climate change using you introduce a GS text about climate change using definition. And the definition is composed of a genus and a differentiate. The genus is phenomenon. The differentiate is situation of the atmosphere and ground is becoming worse. And you use the word you use the article because you are talking about the genus. So that is the first sentence. It's very broad. And then you provide details like sea levels are rising, typhoons are getting stronger, summers are getting hotter, winters become colder, and more devastating weather patterns are occurring. So climate change is considered by many to be a desperate condition that requires global effort to deal with. So it broadens out again. It's broad at the start. The first sentence is start. The second and third sentences, the other sentences are actually supporting the broad sentence, and they are much narrower, and then it broadens out again. So this is an example of writing a global general to specific text about climate change using definition. Okay, next one. We can also write a general to specific text about climate change through general statements. Many influential people and scientists have warned about the implications of climate change. People, including children such as Greta Thunberg, have spoken harshly against governments and individuals for not doing enough to combat this phenomenon. Scientists, using their data, have shown that climate change must be dealt with soon if the present inhabitants of the earth are to survive. Many people believe that the peoples of the earth should prioritize this effort to stop climate change. So this is an example of general to specific text about climate change through general statements. So the first sentence is a general statement talking about people and scientists' warnings, and the other sentences are examples that support the first sentence. And then eventually, the last sentence broadens out again. So this is a general to specific text about climate change through general statements. So you have a general statement, you have details in support of the general statement, you provide more detailed support, and then you have a broader statement. Okay. Thank you so much, class. Uh, Notice that was quite fast. Um, this was supposedly very slow because we were supposed to do a lot of exercises if this was face to face, but this is slow. Okay, this is fast. I think your secretary already asked you to write present if you are present. So I'm no longer going to give you a Google form for checking attendance. Instead, I think the secretary has taken care of it. Notice taken care of, not taken cared of. Okay, do you have any questions, class? Questions? Questions? So next meeting we will be asynchronous. So you will have exercises. Do you have any questions, class? Okay, looks like there are no more questions. So have a nice day, class. Bye bye. Meron, may question. No need to send the attendance to my email. Okay, sa inyo na lang yan, attendance. Kayo na ang hahawak. Okay, have a nice day, class.